This is We Bleed Orange and Black, the podcast for Halloween and horror lovers. Join us as we interview creators, discuss our favorite folklore, and share original spooky stories. I'm Jeff C. Carter, and this week we're talking with Johnny Compton. Johnny Compton is a Stoker Award-nominated author whose short stories have appeared in Pseudopod, Strange Horizons, the No Sleep Podcast, and several other publications. His fascination with frightening fiction started when he was introduced to the ghost story The Golden Arm as a child. He's the author of The Spite House, Devils Kill Devils, and Dead First. Today, he's here to tell us about his new short story collection, Midnight Somewhere. Johnny, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. This is a long time in the making.
Yeah, I guess I would say welcome back, since I did corner you briefly at StokerCon with a bag full of questions and candy.
Yeah.
And you had some hot takes that maybe we can revisit later in the show. But I usually start every episode with an icebreaker. So I'm going to take us back to that time in Stamford, Connecticut, at the Hilton Stamford Hotel and Executive Meeting Center. It was StokerCon 2025. I was graciously leading tours into the liminal spaces and the back rooms of the black mold-infested bowels of this rotting hotel where people were getting seriously bad vibes. And I'm like, oh, Johnny, come on. So you hopped in with a group of other horror authors, and then I turn around and Johnny's gone, and not in a spooky way, because I caught up with you later. I'm like, hey, man, where'd you go? And you were like, nope.
Yeah. At a certain point, I was like, this is somebody dies.
Yeah.
Something could happen here. And here's the thing, I'm a black dude. The idea that the black guy dies first is a little bit of a myth. There's some element to it, though. But you know what I've also thought of is I'm also a big dude, as you know. It's that combination. I'm not just a black dude. I'm also the big guy. That's how sometimes it's like we're going to set the situation, set the tone, make it known that it's serious. We take out the big guy first, and everybody
double whammy.
It's like, oh, shit. Yeah, exactly. So I was like, I'm testing my luck in a lot of different ways here. We've examined it. There's a mysterious, I think it was a Bible written in Arabic or something, an Islamic Bible, but not. Well, it was translated differently.
There was I believe, the Talmud was in Arabic, left open to a page on wards and protection spells, I think, left on the stage.
It's, this is how you end up as part of a creepypasta,
So that's when you noped out. You didn't even see the memorial candles and the stuff in the back?
Nope. Definitely
There
not.
it is, when you said no. So this leads me to my icebreaker question. How the hell are you going to be a creepaway camp counselor, Mr. Compton? Answer the question.
It's a little bit daunting. Creepaway camp, I'm really looking forward to it. It sounds really exciting, really fun. I've never been much of a camper. The last time legitimately I did anything remotely close to camping was back when I was in high school as part of a church group. And the area we were staying in, the cabins we were staying in, had an abandoned section of the camp. They had the newer cabins that we were in, which still weren't all that new, but at least newer. And then the ones from the 60s or whatever that were rotted out were still just standing and just there. And Rick Stivers, wherever he may be nowadays, the kind of leader of our little group, the chaperone, challenged me, dared me to walk from one end of an old abandoned cabin with however many bunks in it to the other. And I did it, and it freaked me out because at one point he's behind me, and it's just a straight kind of shotgun house style through, open doorway at the beginning, open doorway at the end. You're looking at it. He's talking, and he's behind me the whole time. And then at some point I lost track of the conversation, and I guess he had stopped talking and I was talking. And then he just appeared in front. He just walked out in front. And I was like, how the hell? Oh my God. I still remember that. And so if I was that scared back then by just this man of God walking in front of the doorway, I have no idea how I'm going to survive Creepaway Camp, but it'll be a lot of fun.
All right. Well, I will just reiterate that I was shocked when I saw your name as one of the counselors / guests of honor. Not that you don't deserve a place there, but that you wouldn't nope out on the first night.
It's if nothing else, there'll be a good story. I have since then. I have my good friend Peter Rush, who's a fellow author. I've asked him to be the creative executor of my Estate If I Died, which I did not have in place. And so I feel a little better about the idea that if something crazy happens to me at Creepaway Camp, I have somebody who's there to guide my remaining unpublished stories into the light in a responsible way. And I did not have that previously. So maybe that's,
That was
giving me
all
some
that was
sense
holding you
of
back.
peace.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was it.
You could be a horror aficionado or like a scholar of horror and know, like, yes, a bunch of people going to a summer camp under any pretenses is tempting fate. But then you add in the meta aspect of, oh, horror fans are going to be interacting with horror authors at a summer camp situation. And, in every good slasher movie, there's some jackass jump scare fake out where it's like, oh, I put on a mask and I ran through the camp, or I was hiding in your bunk or whatever. And that's just like to set off the first couple free cheap jump scares. And then how many times is that going to happen before it reaches a critical mass where so many people pull hockey masks out of their backpacks or their crossbody bags or their fanny packs or whatever, until someone's like, you know what? You could probably stab Paul Tremblay here and get away with it. Like, have plausible deniability. Sorry, Paul. I just was listening to you on a podcast, so your name was top of mind.
That's like kind of the beauty of the horror genre.
Yeah.
Is that as you're talking about this, there's no other genre I can think of where this, if you did like sci-fi camp, there's no greater possibility of aliens showing up. I'll say, let's say, I'm not going to dismiss anybody who believes in aliens. It's not necessarily my area of expertise or anything that I necessarily believe in, but you're not, by appearing in sci-fi camp, creating an environment that's more welcoming to this thing that you're into.
Yeah.
Like horror, you can do that. Even like a romance camp, like actually probably the odds of you finding romance.
Yeah.
I feel like the odds of actually finding romance at romance camp feels like it would be actually minimized. I feel like it's either minimized or it would accidentally transform into erotica. Like it's all or nothing. It's either you go to romance camp and find out you hate everybody there, or it turns into a wonderful bacchanalia.
Going to an erotica fiction camp
see, that's different.
Give you the best chances of manifesting the genre.
Yes. I love the romance genre and writers. I just feel like romance in particular, like on the page and in real life, is one of those things where if you try to manifest it, it often goes south. It goes sour. Like if you're like, I'm going to go here and fall in love.
Isn't that the first act?
Odds are it's not going to work.
Where some adorable writer goes and then they're tripping all over themselves and then they're thinking about all the tropes and how it's supposed to work, and they end up pissing a bunch of people off, but then they're like, oh, could this be an enemies to lovers?
I didn't even think about that, Jeff. Yeah, you're right. You're dead on. That's the first act.
Yep.
And then they get off to a bad start, and then gradually though they find out that they have certain things in common and they complement each other, and damn it, you're right. Yeah. I take it back.
I have walked you down this rose petal path, so when you are at Creepaway Camp this summer, when someone pulls out a mask as a joke, that is also the first act.
Yeah.
So just make sure that your creative will is, up to date.
I mean, now I'm thinking, like, why not combine the two and just Creepaway Camp setting is where two people fall in love.
Two people.
I'm off the market, but I could totally see two people finding love and going through the romance trope, like you said, like they get off on the wrong foot, but then they discover their mutual love of
killing writers.
Yeah. Is what brings them together. And after they've stabbed me and Paul, and they like their eyes meet and they're like, oh my gosh, I had this plan too. And you go from there.
I'm such a fan of Johnny, and I just know that if he gets tragically knifed to death in his sleeping bag, that his sales are going to go through the roof. It's like the best thing ever for our fan club.
I mean, all of us, anybody who, anything weird happens, whether it's a murderer, I'm still, I looked it up. There's a full moon that night. Fingers crossed that it turns into a werewolf hunt.
Werewolf hunt could go two ways, right? You guys are hunting a werewolf, or a werewolf is hunting you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So if we ended up either catching the werewolf or the werewolf catches us, like whichever direction that goes, I think all of us will experience a wonderful sales boost that a lot of us might not be around to enjoy anymore, but our families will be.
Yes.
And I'm at a stage in my life right now where I care more about my family's well-being than my own. So that's all well and good to me.
Good to know. All right, now I have this as this. I'm just gonna call this podcast Exhibit A. All right. So instead of delving into your backstory, which we got a little hint of in your bio with your first ghost story, The Golden Arm, I want to dive into your current collection, Midnight Somewhere. And I think through that conversation, we're going to get into the type of things you gravitate towards and the way that you approach them. So, Johnny, the first story in your collection is called Funds. F-F-U-N-S. And what I love about that title is that it slightly unnerved me before I had read a single word of the story. The title alone was like, this is icky. I don't like this. Can you describe the story for us?
Sure. So Funds, F-F-U-N-S, like you said, is the word snuff spelled backwards.
There it is.
To call it a story about reverse snuff films, which is in a way what it is, but that's really just the trappings for something else actually happening here. But it's a story where reverse snuff films are rumored to exist and it's kind of a popular creepypasta thing online. And there's a mysterious woman who goes nameless through basically the entire story. We find out that she has approached a criminal enterprise that is operating the legitimate reverse snuff film enterprise, in which you can abuse a corpse until it comes back to life. And through the course of the story, we find out a little bit of why she's motivated to do this, how legitimate it is, and a hint of what her past is as it goes through the story. And it gets really macabre and really freaky. And it's the story that basically saved my writing career. So I have a special attachment to it.
Oh, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about that. Did you end up beating your career to death on camera and then it came back to life, or how did it work?
I mean, not on camera, but my career was I'd sold some short stories prior to this. I've been selling short stories since about 2006, and I'll try to do the short version of this. But basically, I entered a crisis of confidence mode. I hadn't sold anything for a few years, and it wasn't just that I wasn't selling, because if you're a short story writer, you go through a lot of rejection. So I'm used to the rejection aspect of it. It was more so that I thought the stories I was writing at the time were the best stories I'd written to that point, and none of those were selling. And it was like, I've sold stories before that I thought were worse. Why is it now that I'm writing better than ever and I can't sell? And so that in my mind told me I don't even know what my own best is. And if I don't know, which to be frank, I still kind of don't know, but at the moment I didn't understand that doesn't matter, just keep writing. At the moment I was thinking, if I don't even know what my own best is, then what the hell am I doing? So I'm never going to stop writing, even if I stopped selling everything tomorrow. But in my head, I was like, I'm just going to write for myself, and that's it. And I'll come up with story ideas, and I'm not really going to bother with submitting anything because I don't know what I'm doing. But Funds was already out there, and I'd submitted it to a few places, and you're waiting. It takes months usually to hear back from places. And Pseudopod, who I love to pieces and who published my first important, I think, really, one of my first important, I should say, short story sales back in like 2006. They sent me the notification that, hey, you're moving on to the next stage of the process. And then eventually it got to, hey, we're accepting the story. And it was like, oh my God, I can keep doing this. Maybe, and Funds was one of those that I'd written and had been rejected by a few other places. And I was thinking, this is a really cool story. Why doesn't anybody want this? I've written stuff before that I'm very proud of, but I don't think is as cool as this. And like, maybe I'm wrong though. Maybe I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And and as Stephen King put it in on writing, I'm paraphrasing, but basically we don't know what the hell we're doing. We're all just trying to figure it out. So yeah, getting the confidence to the confidence boost from selling that story motivated me to keep going. I was not finished with the Spite House yet. That helped motivate me to finish the Spite House, and I kind of kept going from there. And I don't know if I would have had that motivation without selling this story to Pseudopod. So it's a special one for me because of that.
It's very interesting. You felt like you were producing your best work, and that's when it became less broadly marketable. And I think there's something to that, and I have gone through that as well. Maybe those early stories, when you're just sort of figuring it out, you're still wearing a lot of your influences on your sleeve, and you're aping other more successful published writers. So when you put those early short stories out there, people are like, oh yeah, this is what I know. And then when you start to find your voice and drill down into the weird, unique idiosyncrasies that really turn you on and are uniquely yours, that's where you become more of an unknown and less similar to other pastiches and sort of regurgitated stories that just kind of look like everything else. And I think that valley is where then you need to try to find a place that welcomes your unique voice and not your pastiche beginner style.
Yeah, definitely. The early stories, like I said, that I'm still very proud of, and that I mean, like the very, very first time I remember getting like the acceptance email. You don't get letters anymore, but you get the acceptance email. Hey, we want to publish something. I still remember that story, which wasn't it wasn't a conventional horror story. It was a dramatic story, but with a very grim overtone to it, about a woman in a war zone trying to quiet her baby before the death squad arrives, so she can hide her baby. In the process of quieting her baby, she smothers the child to death, but she doesn't realize she's done that, and then puts it in the hidey hole that she has in her building, in her apartment. I got the acceptance for that story, and then every time I go back and reread that story, I'm like, I like the concept of the story and I still love it, but it is very derivative. It is a little bit pretentious. It does a thing at the end that I hate so much now, but I'd seen other authors do it, where it repeats the last line twice. She gets shot to death, but she dies smiling. I basically echo that. It's like, she died smiling. She died smiling. And I was like, you don't need to do that. Like, why am I echoing that line? Like, if it's good enough on its own, if it's a good enough closer, don't echo that. Now, sometimes that can call for it. I'm not saying everybody who does that is wrong, but I know for myself, me in the moment, I was just doing it. I didn't do it with any intentionality, let's say.
Gotcha.
I did it because, like you said, I saw other people do it.
Right.
And it was like, this is how you close it.
This is how you make it important and poignant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the first one. And so, like, what you're saying, I feel like is so spot on, because I've gone back and reread that story, and it's like, this isn't really me. This is like me doing somebody else's style in so many different areas of it. And it's the first story that I sold. It is easy to fall into a trap of, okay, that's what's selling. I got to write more of what sells, and less about, I got to write what's true to my style and develop my style and learn what's good or bad about my style, and accentuate the things that are great and hopefully minimize the things that are not so great. And then you get to a point where I felt like I'd done that, and I felt like Funds was just really, I remember being super excited when I finally wrote it, because I have this spreadsheet of ideas that I work from, and normally there's a lot more detail, and that one just had the title. I don't remember when I got this idea. I probably woke up in the middle of the night, 'cause sometimes this happens. I wake up in the middle of the night and I write something down. I was just like, oh, just had an idea, just had a nightmare, put this down. Next day, I'm like, what the hell was that? That one just said Funds, and then just reverse snuff film. It was just like, for several weeks, I remember looking at that and being like, I don't even, what do I do with this? And then gradually it was like, come back to this, there's something here. And I developed this entire kind of world around it, this crime story with all these things kind of in the shadows of unknown elements. And I was like, this is really cool. I really loved it. And then, like you said, it becomes, maybe at the time it felt like less marketable, but then you only need to find one market that wants to take a chance on it, that really loves it. And so you just keep plugging away and don't self-reject, as I've learned since then. And it turned into this story that there's a reason why it's the lead off story in the book, because I'm incredibly proud of it. It's very important to me, and I feel like it sets the tone in the book of this is going to be like kind of how off the wall it can get for me. And I'd have a lot of other stories. I have at least a few other stories in the book that I feel like are more conventional, because I have a soft spot for like a conventional, straightforward ghost story
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of ways, and I love that. So getting to write those is also fun. But my imagination goes into some pretty bizarre places as well, and Fun is an example of that. But it was a trial and error process of figuring out my voice and getting to something that is as specific to me as Fun's is.
What I love about short story collections in general is that it really gives you an overview of how an author's mind works, how they approach story, deconstruct, reconstruct, spin stories, things like that. So I definitely noticed that there is that strong through line of ghost stories. You write with rhythm very well. There's
Mm.
certain touchstones to like a sound or something liminal, just sort of off screen, that you have a very strong command of. And then you do this other thing, which for me really elevates it. It was my favorite kind of horror story, is that you take a premise and you say, okay, if this is true, what else is true? And then you say, I'm going to give it another twist. So
Mm.
it's not just
Mm.
that these are reverse snuff films. There's a larger world attached to that. You invest it with visceral, grotesque detail and emotionality, and then you add another twist to it. And like it all comes together in Funds in a really great way. And you just, it is the perfect appetizer to this collection. Funds is perfectly mirrored by your closing chapter, Dead Bastard Revival Services. And by the time I got to this one, I was like, all right, Johnny's got some kind of hang up about this. I don't know what's going on, but give us a sort of summary of this one.
When I was much younger, I had this as a larger world, an idea of I've always had this idea of like, what if Ghostbusters went left? Like what if it went south in terms of like what they do with capturing the dead? And so this was one of those ideas that I originally thought was going to be a larger novel, and maybe one of these days I'll come back to it like that. But I don't really have enough beyond just this premise. But we discover in this world, the afterlife is a known certainty, and we are able to breach it and bring back, spirits. And I always think that anytime there's a situation like this, A, there will become laws surrounding it, any kind of new discovery. And B, there's always going to be an enterprise, and there's always a profit in breaking the law. And so what would these lawbreakers turn into? And so this underground criminal enterprise of people that bring back the dead for comeuppance. If you wanted to bring back the person who stole money from your grandparents and then died, you could hire these people to go find their soul in the afterlife, put them into an electronic puppet that they've created, and do what you will with them for however long you've paid for this service till they come back and retrieve the puppet. But you're able to torture this soul. And then it becomes a story about what is the nature of torturing a soul. I'm very fascinated. I wrote this article for Crime Reads a couple of years ago, I think now. This idea that being a ghost would be intensely frightening in a lot of respects. And I think that's the reason why the idea of seeing a ghost is so scary. Because you can argue that seeing a ghost should be reassuring in some respects. Like, oh, we continue on in some way. We're so afraid of death, but this is proof that there's something beyond death. But ghosts always seem, at least most of the time, maybe not always, but a lot of the time, miserable at best and eternally suffering at worst.
Mm-hmm.
And seeing that and thinking that could be my fate at some point is actually like the secret scariest thing about seeing a ghost, because being a ghost would also be immensely horrifying. And so then it becomes a matter of, if you how do you torture a ghost if you could capture it and put it in some kind of containment. This is the containment unit, like I said, it's
Mhm.
Ghostbusters. They have their own different kind of containment situation, and now you've brought them in this limiting vessel after they've escaped into a more freeing state, ostensibly of being a spirit. They're having to confront these people that they thought they'd escaped the living, and now instead they're having to feel physical pain again through these, the technology we've invented. It's kind of a hideous experiment, and that's kind of the source of all this idea. It was a pretty fun story to write, I got to be honest.
What I like about this story in particular is that you give a mention that there had been huge aftershocks through society, the legal system, and religion, because, like, oh, we have proof that there's an afterlife. But you focus on a very niche thing, which is, all right, someone's going to make a buck off this, and they're going to do it in the most sadistic way possible, which I think is a very accurate reading of human nature. But also, part of this world that you've created is that people know there is no heaven or hell. And that's what really fucks with them. Because they're like, wait, these people are dead and they're not going to get punished. And so
Yeah.
they just got off scot-free. And it creates that rage and that incentive that they might have sublimated into a more spiritual, laissez-faire attitude of, well, they'll get theirs. They'll get their just
Mhm.
reward, or they'll go to hell or whatever. And so it's almost righteousness that makes them drag these spirits back into the material world to punish them. So it is a very sticky idea. It's very cool. What I kept hoping for, because you always put a twist on a twist on a twist, and what might be something to consider if you haven't for this larger story you might spin off from this, is that what happens when one of these robots gets off the chain.
Oh yeah, no, that's
Oh, yeah.
there was there was definitely, like, my larger idea was going to be like, you can't control something like this is destined
Right.
to go haywire.
Yeah.
And in this version of the story, it was more about establishing, this universe, and kind of a like you said, the it takes place in a church. It's a congregation. It's confronting these ideas, like you said, of, we have proof of an afterlife, but what if you have proof of an afterlife, but no proof of hell or heaven or God? And what would these religious people, how would they feel? They're going through their crisis of faith. And for me, the twist was more so like the the preacher at the end, and how he feels about what he's let happen to his flock, and the powerlessness he feels. And it's like the grim reality that is now they're facing, because you've discovered the afterlife, and yet you still have to maintain faith
Right.
in the higher power. It's like, wait, we discovered the thing that should bring us closer to this, and somehow it took us farther away.
Faith
If
in
any,
the face of proof is a really nice thin slice across the concept of faith.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's, for me, it was fascinating to explore this idea that man, like, so there is something after we die, and that's the thing that I've been preaching this whole time. But discovering it, and discovering that maybe it's not what we've been preaching, has actually brought my congregation to do something that prior to this discovery they never would have done. And it was fascinating for me to do that. But yeah, one of the notes I had for this story that I came up with was that, like, that's why you have the machines and everything like this. Like, it's gonna go off the rails at some point. There will be kind of a Terminator-esque situation where a machine goes wrong, because I was thinking like, oh well, like, basically the criminals bite off more that they can chew.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's one thing to the character that they bring to life in this is just basically a punk ass mass shooter, you know. But it's like, and not to say that this is like like, you don't want to lionize other types of criminals, but it's like, what if you actually went after like a war criminal
Mm-hmm.
who has like actual combat experience, and isn't necessarily going to be as overwhelmed. What if you accidentally, the person you bring back is effectively like John Rambo,
Right.
but now he's in a fucking
Robot body.
body.
Yeah.
You accidentally put John Rambo's soul into a robot body and he gets free. And I love the book First Blood. I love the movie, but the book is practically a horror story. I have this pet theory that a little bit of First Blood motivates a little bit of the ending, or the climax, I guess I should say, of Carrie, but that's a whole other discussion. But I do know that Stephen King loved First Blood. Like, he's on the record about that. And so that concept of revisiting that story has always been in mind. So I did kind of have that in mind. But it was also one of those things, I came up with that idea when I was so much younger.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to revisit some of it because there was definitely a lot of ideas that were just me being like 20, 19, whatever it was, years old, and thinking it would be badass if this happened. And it's like nowadays, it's like that's so corny. Don't do that, Johnny. Don't turn this into like super robot with a combat soldier's soul, like bloodbath. Although, there's still that part of me that's in me. Like, as I say that out loud, I'm like, it is pretty cool.
It's got a ring to it. It's got a ring to it.
It's still kind of cool. I don't know.
Look, whether or not you want to write something badass, it's still badass.
Exactly. Sometimes the idea you just got to let the idea steer you a little bit there. Yeah. Don't fight it.
And also, something else could come through into one of these vessels. Just because you have proof of an afterlife doesn't mean you know everything that's out there.
Exactly. It's I think I've mentioned something to this effect in the story, but once something supernatural becomes established, it becomes the natural. Mm-hmm. And we know about the natural world is that we still have a lot of it that we don't know. Mm-hmm. People talk about how little of our oceans we've actually explored. And especially when it's a new frontier, when every time we look through history books and it's like, through the Australian outback when they were first going through it, and it's like you're starting to discover parts of this that you were not prepared for. And this is how, the explorers that get famous aren't always the ones that come back. Some of the most famous explorers are the guys that went missing and we found their remains ages later. So it's, this is kind of a situation in that story as well. If I ever expand on it, you're getting into a new frontier, and there's always danger with the new frontier.
Go ahead. You can either spin the wheel, pick a random story.
I've got two in mind. The first one I want to do is one of my favorite things I've ever written that I knew when I wrote it is probably not going to sell. Whatever Happened to Crash Test Chris?
Okay.
I've submitted that, maybe 25 different publications. I was trying everything. It would get to like the last stage of editing with a lot of places, and they'd be like, we actually really like this story. We have no idea what to do with this. So the premise of this, the lead character is written from his perspective. His name is Chris. He's recounting his life. He discovers when he's young and being bullied that he has a really should be useless, quote unquote, superpower, which is that he can voluntarily break any bone in his body and then immediately heal himself with no permanent damage done, which is, again, kind of worthless. But then it was like, so what do you do with something like that? He thinks about becoming a Hollywood stuntman, thinks that's not going to work, but he's living this past part of his life that he's discussing is set during the 80s. Pro wrestling is still in what they would call the territories phase, where there's like the big dog, which is WWF at the time, but everything else is kind of like regionally. You go to Georgia, there's a wrestling program there. You go to the Seattle area, there's different people doing things, so on and so forth. He starts in LA. He realizes he can just tour the country being a wrestler who gets horribly mutilated by the local bad guy and get a check and move on. And as the story's progressing, you realize it's leading to a catastrophic moment where, again, like you mentioned, there's kind of always an added twist. Something's going to happen. But there's like a dread I'm hoping to instill in this. Like, at some point, there's a reason why he's talking about this in the past tense, and something must have gone wrong. And he's doing what they call, like, I'm a kind of semi-lapsed wrestling fan, but they have what's more fun than actually watching wrestling to me these days is listening to old wrestlers talk about it, because it looks like the stories are insane, and they call it a shoot interview. Like, this is real talk. This is like what actually happened. And so this is the format of the story, is him being interviewed by somebody telling his story, and you realize it's leading up to the moment where his power, something horrific happens. There's an incident in the ring. It was just a hell of a lot of fun to write. I'm hoping that is pretty funny. Chris is getting off a lot of different one-liners. The scenarios are just kind of silly, but it's also just really grim, and it has this, as it gets to the kind of climactic moment where something catastrophic happens in the ring, there's like something I write in there that just sounds, in my mind when I visualize it, I just think this would just be so messed up to see in person if this really happened. Like, it would just be so bizarre and just insane. And I just loved writing that. And it's, to me, it's one of my favorite stories that I've ever written, like I said. And it's also one of the stories that I wrote at the time that one didn't really affect my confidence as much. It was just kind of like, okay, I know I wrote something here that what market is there for this? It's horrific, but I wouldn't call it a horror story. It's not a crime story. None of the, the mainstream literary places are going to think twice about wanting to publish this. I tried a couple of bizarro markets, but it's not quite bizarre enough throughout for them. Even, it was just everybody kind of responded to it that this is really cool and different, but also for our market, which is, a big deal. Like, who are they selling to? What are their readers expecting? They have to cater to that, and I totally understand that. And the consensus seemed to be like, we don't know who this would be for. And I'm able to put it into this collection because who it's for is for people who like the kind of weirdness that I write. So hopefully by the time you get to that story, you're already on board with it, and you're going to be with it.
The beauty of a short story collection is that you can put those stories that haven't found a home elsewhere into the body of a larger work. So you see like, oh, this does fit and this does have a home. It's nestled between all these other ones that just happen to land with different markets or things like that. Setting it in the world of amateur or non-mainstream wrestling does give it a very gritty, grounded feel that sort of sets off this core premise, which is very absurd or high concept even. Kind of like your story, Safety in Numbers, is another like, what's a very weird or terrible ability to have. And then if you set that off against the gritty world of crime, not only does it ground and anchor the high concept part, but it allows you to explore it in a way that, has real consequences. Crash Test Chris gets horribly mangled volitionally, and that does seem to be a bit of a runner through these stories, where getting horribly mangled is not the end of your story. It's pretty heartless of you to do, because usually the one silver lining of getting absolutely fucked up is like, okay, I can lay down and rest. Put me in a coma, let me die, let me off stage, please. And Johnny's like, nope. Your story starts with you getting horribly mangled.
I think I've wondered about this, where that comes from for me. And I do think it's from reading The Monkey's Paw when I was 8 years old or something, 7 or 8 years old. And the idea of, we never see the son when he gets wished back to life, but we know he was mutilated some kind of horrible way that they don't even want to mention. He was pulled through a machine. The husband is telling the wife, you don't want him to come back looking like this. And then he's pounding on the door, and we never get that look at him. But part of me is like, that's still one of the scary, just thinking about it now, that's one of the creepiest things, is like, just like you said, you got horribly mangled. This should be the end of his story, but it's wished back to life by his desperate, poor mother. And so now he's coming home, and I've got to deal with this and endure this pain from whatever happened to me after I was pulled through this machinery in this industrial accident. And I think that lingered with me. And that is, that's why, like you said, it appears, more than once in my storytelling, that, something horrific happening to you, the body horror there is not necessarily the end of the story for you. It's sometimes the beginning.
So I'm going to throw that directly to the Genie and the Inquisitor. So the genie and the Inquisitor sounds at the outset like it's going to be a fairy tale story. And then it slowly devolves into like a cosmic horror that has at its core a clearly, deeply thought, well-reasoned, persistent argument. Like, I can tell that you have thought a lot about monkey's paws and genie's wishes. This story is a vehicle for it, but you do it in a way that is encompassed in horror. And I thought it really works because it's such a multifaceted idea.
Thanks. Genie and the Inquisitor is kind of the birthplace of that. Is the simple, anybody who's a fan of horror reading, what have you, you're always wondering, what would I do in this situation? And we've all seen or read stories about a genie who grants a wish in some messed up way. The Wishmaster movie series built an entire franchise around that. And it was like, okay, so how, like you said, there's the monkey's paw. There's always a caveat, a dark caveat to a lot of these wishes. And it was like, what would I say? What would I do to try to address this? So then the concept of, I have a character who was wronged by a genie at some point, figures this out, and came up with something, which was just to ask it a question and to make a wish that it has to answer rather any question asked of it honestly, and kind of then get into this little debate between. I always like the idea of like addressing the fact that some of these things that are supposed to be this incredibly higher power, amazing force of the supernatural, is bound by like rules, and is also incredibly petty. This genie has all this power to grant any wish, so why not just grant the damn wishes in a appropriate way? So the debate between these two characters kind of gets into that, but then kind of have to do something with it. I love it. You pointed out earlier, like there's always a twist on the twist. I'm sort of cognizant of that when I'm writing, but I always just kind of think, well, you have to do something with the story.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes it's not even about intentionally putting a twist on the twist. It's more so just like, I can't just have these two characters debate, or I can't have just one person get the upper hand and that's it. One of the two get the upper hand and that's it. Like there has to be motivation. And I love suggesting something larger that you're just not privy to, the information you're not privy to. I feel like that's the nature of human curiosity, right? When you drive down the street and unfortunately, if you see a car accident, it's not just the accident that at least me, I don't think about just, people got into an accident. I was like, how did this happen? There's so much more that I didn't know about here. And I'm curious. I want to know, like, was somebody distracted? Were the roads bad? Did a traffic light malfunction? Was another car responsible for this and that car drove off and we don't even know about this person? There's just so much more there to this scenario. And so that's kind of my stories. It's like the car wreck, but I want you're thinking about all this other stuff that happened with it. And so we never find out what exactly happened in the past with this person that has this vendetta against all of the jinn. But we know that it's afflicted him so badly that he is basically on a one-man mission to try to destroy as many of these things as possible in the most horrifying ways possible.
I don't want to give away the entire collection. We can visit one more story on our way out. It is your choice.
I've got one more that I wanted to bring up because, like I said, I have a fondness for like traditional ghost storytelling. We've talked about some pretty off the wall, some of the more off the wall stories. And then I got to write one that was just based on one of the earliest ghost stories I ever heard. He Used to Scare Me by Accident is just purely my take on a ghost story from when I was in elementary school about a girl in her bed hearing about the ghost in her haunted house telling her every step of the way that he is approaching the room. I'm on the first step. I'm on the fifth step. I'm in the hallway. And I was like, how do I give this a different life? So I put in this history with this couple and this woman who is a little bit jumpy, which may or may not be based on real people I've known in my life who are a little bit jumpy. To be fair to them, for a big dude, apparently I walk very light because they're not the only ones. I've done this to many people, and they're like, "Geez, I didn't hear you coming." I'm like, I don't feel like I'm I'm not like a ninja. I'm not trying to sneak up on people, but apparently I would have been pretty good at it if that had been my calling, because I have a inadvertent habit of doing that. But she's this character, she has that situation with her husband. It leads to an accident in which he dies. And she is arguably to blame. And then she has her first encounter with his ghost. Based on their history, he's trying to actually affectionately warn her about where he is in the house, but she says maybe the wrong thing. And it goes from there. And just kind of being able to end on the line that it ends on, especially. I loved writing that one. I can picture where I was sitting. Sometimes I get out of the house and go write like a pretentious a-hole. And I was out with my laptop at one of my favorite spots. I can see where I was, and I got to that end line, and I was like, I feel like I kind of nailed this one. Sometimes you feel that way, and it was pretty great.
You absolutely nailed that one. It is a classic ghost story that is filtered in such a way to make it immediate and modern and devastating, because you have the rhythm of the ghost story, which I mentioned at the top, but also it feels very relatable. It's not a, oh, I heard once, or did you hear about the lady who? It's a relationship. And it's a very fun, emotional way to explore this dynamic between these two people. It's told in a confessional style, so it's got that immediacy, and it's so modern. Because she's so jumpy and she can't handle horror movies, she turns to true crime podcasts.
Yeah.
Which we all know those people. And
yes.
You absolutely understand that she's trying to grapple with this anxiety she has, and she's trying to desensitize herself. But along the way, everything she does to try to diminish her problem is making her problem worse. And filling her head with true crime podcasts does not help her nerves at all. And everything the husband does to try to help makes things worse. It's so good. It's such a good story. You absolutely did nail it.
Thank you. Thank you. So it was one of those when you come up with the idea, you're like, part of me's my process. Unfortunately, I have a negative headspace about almost everything in life, but sometimes it works out for me. About myself, I'm like super clumsy, but nobody seems to realize this because every time I get up to do almost anything is like, just don't trip and fall. Don't be an idiot. You're going to make yourself look stupid if you trip and fall right here, because I have enough of that in my history that I'm now just constantly thinking that. It's kind of transferred to my writing, which probably isn't the healthiest, but like I got the idea and I was like, this is a cool idea. Don't screw it up. Get it right. Like, so then but then that forces me to like sort of take my time with it a little. And it's like, okay, like you said, develop a relationship. How do you make it scarier? Develop a relationship, make it relatable, make it kind of root for these people, even when you know the cool magic trick / hack, cheat code, etc. of a horror story. Somebody goes into it knowing it's a horror story, and you can screw with them. It's like when I was watching Sinners, and like it's a lengthy first act of getting to know people, but then I remember reading a certain point, I was like, oh shit, a bunch of these people are going to die. I don't think it's much of a spoiler to say that about Sinners. Not everybody makes it out. And it was like, I know this is exactly what he's doing. I like these people now. Ryan Coogler, I know what you were doing here. You're making them tell jokes. You're making me feel like, oh, they've got a family. They've got this. They got a business. They've got a life. And some of these people are not going to walk out of this alive. And having the advantage of being able to like leverage that against somebody who's deliberately getting into this story looking for it, but then being able to still twist the knife on them. That's part of the fun. And it's part of the contract between reader and writer that's unspoken. It's like, hey, I want you to do this to me. And I kind of want you to do it in a way that like gets me off balance a little bit. I know I'm gonna see it coming, but if you can like get me to turn my head and forget for a second, and then it's like, damn it, you did it. I don't know how you did it, but you did it. That's the beauty of the genre to me. And this story is like one of my favorites because I got to do that. And you build this relationship with this couple, but it's like something's gonna go off here. It's a past tense title, used to do this. So you know something's gonna happen to this guy probably. And sure enough, it does. And then it's like this loving couple that seem like they're getting along well, and they're telling you about some of their date nights and stuff like that. Yeah, and then it goes south, and it's like, damn it, like this is the kind of world you inhabit when you pick up a book like this. Things are not going to go well. That's the fun. Being able to do that was really it's one of those things where I learned about myself that I'm capable of doing this, and I can't wait to write more stories like that.
Let's bring it on home with a speed round Halloween questions. You've already gone on record as trash talking Tootsie Rolls and Butterfingers.
I stand by that.
As well you should. So best candy.
I'm going to say Twix. That was my favorite when I was a kid.
So Twix is kind of like the brother to Butterfingers.
I don't know what it is in Butterfinger. There's like, is it like a toffee or something?
We talked about it. It's fiberglass, I think.
Yeah.
Do you have any memorable Halloweens from when you were a kid?
Oh, man. I remember my mom sewing me a werewolf costume one year. And it was very elaborate. My mom could sew a lot. And she used to go all out for Halloween. That's a whole other discussion, but it's been a fascinating journey to see her go from being all out on Halloween when I was younger. And then she went through a phase with her Christianity where she was like, Halloween is evil. And now she's like, because she's like, went deeper into the Christianity to the extent that she's like read the Bible and teaches it and stuff. And she realizes that like, wait a minute, some of this stuff is just like superfluous and silly, like that people get hung up on. Halloween is not evil, it's neutral, who cares? So now she's kind of back around to being like, yeah, Halloween's fine. We did a trunk or treat with the great grandbaby. And so I'm like, oh, that's cool. Anyway, so back when she was like super duper into it though, and would just elaborately decorate the house, put up the dry ice before it was easy to get dry ice. It was pre-Amazon, you couldn't order this stuff. I don't know where she was getting it. And have grave like smoke coming up from graves, makeshift graves she put in the yard, and then she sewed together this crazy werewolf costume, which was awesome. If I say so myself, I won a contest at school for best, costume, but it slowed me down that Halloween. Like half the houses were like, "Oh my God, this is amazing. Harold, you got to come see this." And like, the husband is back there and he's like, "What? You got to come see." I don't know why. I grew up in Mississippi. Nobody had this voice, but this is the only voice I could think of. Harold, you got to come see this. And like, so then he finally comes up and he's got something. Oh my gosh, what did you like? This is amazing and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, this is all wonderful, but could you please, in the words of Jerry Seinfeld, could you hurry it up with the Three Musketeers? This is, I'm losing time. My parents have a curfew on me. I only have so much time to be out here with my brothers, and I'm gonna miss out on some candy. I feel like I probably got like a 20% less of a haul than all the other surrounding Halloweens because the costume was too damn good.
I love asking that question. I love getting all these little snippets and memories from different people. But as a person who often mines Halloween for stories, sometimes someone will bring up an aspect that I've never considered. And the idea of a costume that's so good that it ruins your trick-or-treating, amazing.
I've got a neighbor who I love to pieces, is a wonderful human being. We were out this Halloween, and nowadays, I know in our neighborhood, you sit outside. You don't even let the kids come up and ring the doorbell. It's easier to sit outside. He was every kid that came up. He's like, all right, before I give you a candy, you got to explain your costume to me. And I wanted to be like, man, I love you. You're a great dude, and this is a nice thing you're doing, but you're slowing the kids up. I've got a system, man. I've got candy already in a bag. I pre-bag the candies, little candy bags, 5 pieces a piece, 3 chocolates, 2 fruit candies. Grab it and go. Thanks. Get on with your day. This is what you're here for. I get it. I don't need you to explain, I don't know what half this stuff is. Some of it's some new anime thing. I can tell. It looks like nothing I've seen before. It's past me. And that's like the other part of it. I hear him asking these questions. He's older than me. I'm in my mid-40s. He's older than me. I'm like, you don't know what any of this is, man. Like, they're trying to explain it to you. Like, you don't know what
they're trying to explain
like, the new
K-pop Demon Hunters to him. And it's like, there's a lot you need to know before you can even wrap your mind around K-pop Demon Hunters.
Exactly. It's like, like, why are you even setting both of you guys up for this experiment? Just throw them a few candies and keep it moving.
Awesome. Can you tell us about what projects you're working on next?
Sure. In February, my 3rd novel, Dead First, comes out. It's a crime noir horror hybrid. In late 2026, I have a novella coming out through Shortwave that is a sci-fi horror, my first sci-fi horror, which I'm really excited about because that's, again, my favorite horror movie is Alien. I think The Thing is John Carpenter's best movie, not necessarily the most iconic, obviously, but The Thing is flawless. And I love sci-fi horror, and I can't wait to dabble into that. And then actively writing my 4th novel, which is, the title is to be determined. Basically, I have my own working title, but the publisher will have their input on that. And I have an anthology that I'm editing. Don't have a set date on that yet, but that will be forthcoming in the next year to 2 years or so, with some big names attached to it.
Can you tease us about the theme of the anthology?
It is titled Where Devils Stand. And the theme of the anthology is that every story is set in a place where it is rumored the devil has appeared on Earth.
Nice. Johnny, where can people find you online?
JohnnyCompton.com. Social media is at Compton Writes. Primarily Instagram. I'm trying to learn more TikTok. God damn, I sound old. That's the most old man thing I think I've ever said. I've got to start calling movies shows at this point now. Like, that is
programs.
I've just transitioned.
Calling shows programs.
Oh, yeah, programs. Yes, exactly. I just said something that transitioned me fully into old manhood. Oh my God. So I'm trying to be more active on TikTok is probably what I should have said. I'm trying to learn TikTok. Jesus Christ. Oh man. I think my beard already has some gray in it. I think all the non-gray just like completely washed out.
Dude,
as soon as
your eyebrows just went stark white. Your eyes clouded up like a fish that had been out of water for like 3 days. Good God.
Dude, my both of my knees are just immediately shot as soon as I said that. I don't know how I'm going to walk down the stairs without a cane now. Oh my God. So anyway, that's where you can find me online.
All right. Well, Johnny, this was amazing. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Dude, this was a blast. I know I talked your ear off, so I apologize for that. But anytime you want to have me back, just let me know. This was awesome.
Thanks for listening. Please subscribe and follow. We're now on YouTube. Links are in the show notes. You can find me at jeffccarter.com and hit the link to pick up my collection, We Bleed Orange and Black, 31 fun-sized tales for Halloween. Until next time, stay spooktacular.
Anyway, that's our show. That's
our show.
That's the lesson. That's the lesson for this podcast.
One to grow on.
Sometimes an innocent kid has to get beaten up for us to find out lessons in life.